क्या आयुर्वेदा से चश्मे का जो नंबर है वो रिवर्स हो सकता है?
बिल्कुल हो सकता है।
So, Puneet, what do you have to say about that?
So, Raghav, on the first glance, going into this 20-second clip of this video, I feel that, if somebody is making a claim on something, that there is a treatment where we have been able to, where the number of the specs can go down. तो वो एक blatant claim है without any proof. But proof, आपने वो एक general statement दे दी, जिसकी वजह से there could be other doctors who would ask for proof, and then this discussion goes out in the universe where the patients are watching, and when they watch, they try to kind of take that blind faith and then get disappointed when they don't meet results. So I think we need to be careful in our communication, so that instead of making a claim, we should show that, okay, this is what happened with me, and the results cannot be same in every patient. It cannot be a generalized statement, right? So this is my take on it.
Right. Kajal, what's your take?
Which is why, I would actually link how the same thing happened with Patanjali, right? Why they made some casual statement कि इससे सब ठीक हो जाएगा, ये हमने दवाई निकाली है and all that, and that casual statement carried over in the newspapers, right? And that is when the other doctors, the believers of other sciences actually questioned that statement, right? So let's be, just because we are doing a podcast, just because we are appearing in an interview, does not allow us to make casual statements which has repercussions, especially with the patient community.
Right. Kajal?
See, there are a lot of factors that come into play. First of all, whether it is a recent onset short-sightedness or long-sightedness, and what is the power, if it's a high power or a low power. So I have seen in my college OPD, patients having low power or recent onset, they have been able to benefit from a lot of treatments. But a person who has a very high power, I don't think we can help much. So that individual has to wear specs. So yeah, it is important to educate the audience about these factors rather than just saying that it's completely reversible. So in some cases, yes, some cases no. It depends on the patient to patient.
Yeah. And also another thing, Raghav, that the question was, क्या आयुर्वेद से चश्मे का नंबर कम हो सकता है? और उन्होंने जवाब दिया कि आयुर्वेद से बिल्कुल हो सकता है। और तो फिर उसने क्वेश्चनर ने पूछा कि तो फिर ऐसा बताते क्यों नहीं है, ऐसा वो क्यों नहीं है, प्रचलित क्यों नहीं है, प्रेवलेंट क्यों नहीं है, राइट? प्रचार क्यों नहीं होता इसका? और फिर जो डॉक्टर है वो जवाब देते हैं कि क्योंकि लैसिक सर्जरी की मार्केट है, क्योंकि ऐसी चीजें, ऐसी सर्जरीज होती हैं जिनकी मार्केट कम हो जाएगी, इसलिए इसका प्रचार नहीं होता। अब यहाँ देखने वाली बात है कि ये जो दुर्प्रचार है या जो बैड पब्लिसिटी है, जिसकी वजह से सर्जरीज बढ़ रही हैं, जिसकी वजह से फोर्सिबली उनको भी सर्जरी एडवाइस किया जाता है जिनको नहीं करना चाहिए या जिनको जरूरत नहीं है, वो डॉक्टर्स की कोई अपना ओपिनियन है या अपना काम करने का तरीका है। उसकी वजह से आप पूरी एक ब्लैंकेट स्टेटमेंट देकर पूरी एक साइंस को खत्म नहीं कर सकते। अगर किसी डॉक्टर ने गलत कर लिया तो इसका मतलब ये नहीं है, अगर अदरवाइज इट बिकम्स अ वॉर बिटवीन एलोपैथी, आयुर्वेदा एंड अदर फॉर्म्स ऑफ मेडिसिन, राइट? तो आप कम से कम देखिए कि कौन कर रहा है ऐसा। कोई अगर एक बंदा बुरा कर रहा है तो ये नहीं कि पूरी हम लड़ाई चालू कर लें कि नहीं वो सर्जरी की वजह से होता है और ये होता है। I mean, if you are dissenting, then there could be a correct form of dissent or a responsible form of dissent.
Yeah. Or you dissent with at least some evidence rather than just anecdotes.
Yeah.
And if you are presenting, or if your whole opinion is based on your own personal experience, then you have to voice that as well, right? That I have, in my experience, I have seen 100 patients, and among those 100 patients, for 50 it has happened, and for 50 it has also not happened.
Yeah.
Because I guess in Ayurveda it would also be trickier to generalize, right? Considering how personalized the whole approach is.
Exactly. There are Ayurvedic eye hospitals, so it is clear that Ayurveda can do a lot in terms of different eye diseases, but to demonstrate that, we cannot throw a sensational statement just to get some eyeballs on the podcast.
Right. Understood. Okay.
I think better answer would be yes and no, rather than saying कि definitely हो सकता है.
But Kajal, yes and no doesn't get you eyeballs, right? Like, who will listen if we keep saying yes and no?
They will always listen the no before the yes.
Yeah. And also, like, a lot of the pop science and the pop medicine podcasts, etc. out there, they do depend a lot on those controversial sound bites to really drive user views and engagement. But if you preface all of that, okay, before we make this statement, let us put some caveats, then like your user views will just tank. And so I guess it's also the media game with podcasts now. You know, just as newspapers earlier used to publish all these different headlines and sensational claims, now that space has been taken up a lot by podcasts. Which brings me to, like, have you guys come across any podcast that you really like from a sense of view of how they approach things in a measured manner? Like any medicine podcast, any podcast on Ayurveda or anything?
There's a doctor by name Vignesh Devraj, so he's an Ayurvedic doctor.
Mhm.
So his podcast is good. I think he was one of the first ones to do a Ayurvedic podcast. Like the way he discusses topics is really good, and he not only interviews Ayurvedic doctors but also doctors from other holistic medicine backgrounds, and even people who have had good experiences taking panchakarma or Ayurvedic treatments. So yeah, the way he explains things is good, like easy and simple to understand.
Right. Puneet, have you come across any?
Not many, Raghav, but I personally like Dr. Nambi's podcast.
Okay.
So while he's not interviewing that many people, but he's actually taking shlokas from ancient scriptures and actually translating it and giving a little perspective on how it can be expanded and adopted in your own life. So I like that. Plus, I like to watch the reruns of the conference events sometimes.
Okay.
While there might not be one podcast which will have those reruns, but then they are kind of spread all over the internet.
Right. Okay. Understood. Kajal, you had shared this article recently. What about it struck you?
Well, first of all, it's a band-aid used by people of all age groups, and it's been used from such a long time, and it's only come out now.
Mm-hmm.
And there are so many similar things coming out now. So the question is, did the FDA or the governing bodies know about this? Like, how could they not know about this?
Right.
And why is it coming out now?
Mm-hmm.
Like, there was an article even for baby talcum powders, right? The same brand which has been mentioned in the article, the same brand products had similar ingredients. So how could this have been overlooked for such a long time? And what are the potential effects it would have had, and it would have gone unnoticed? So
Right. And could it also be because band-aids are not really considered medicine? That could be one reason why something like this could have slipped under the radar.
yes, but see, why are band-aids used? It's going to have direct contact with your blood, right? Because you have a cut or a bruise, you wash it up and just put a band-aid on it. So if it is having direct contact with your body fluids, I think it should be scrutinized very seriously.
Yeah.
I
But
mean, it is easy and it is a quick fix, so it's very convenient. But what about what goes in it?
but isn't this so? How do you address it? Because there are not just band-aids. Like then there are so many other things, from ointments to oils, etc., that we all apply.
Right.
And in an ideal world, there should be some standards, etc., for all of them. But we know that that's not necessarily the case all the time, right? Even we've heard in the news, cough syrups, around the world causing problems because of the excess presence of certain chemicals, etc., in them. So what's the solution, Puneet? Like, what should we do, like, when we see these kinds of reports? Like, never apply Band-Aid again?
See, with talc and band-aid, where your contact to the to the thing that we're talking about is very, very less, and neither are you going to apply bandages every day, right? So before that, to your point about whether these things should be checked and why did it go unnoticed, that going unnoticed is not an excuse, because if this comes from the US FDA and your authority is responsible for checking it for safety, so it can't be an excuse that we did not notice it and now we are noticing it. How did you approve the product before it went out in the market if you did not notice it earlier, right? So, and just because you noticed it and just because you sent it out, sent the news release first, it of course it cannot release you from you are still guilty about not noticing it, right? There has been an error on the authorities' part. Having said that, I think our any toxicity or any bad effects of anything are harmful to the degree of your body's own immunity, right? So if a healthy person applies a band-aid, they may not get the effects than a not so healthy person, right? So we need to look at that from that angle, because most of the time there are, let's say 90% of the things in the world will contain some chemical which you don't know about, right? And you can't keep, you have to live your life. You can't keep analyzing, putting everything under a microscope lens, right? So I feel that, it is easier and a better reward to work on one's own immunity than to actually worry about those things, because these things will come and go and will also have kind of a lobby which with everybody's mood playing out. Every authority is composed of humans, and humans will have their own feelings and emotions, right?